Picture this. It's 2 a.m. Everyone else in your house is asleep, and you're lying in the dark having a full-blown debate with yourself about something someone said to you in 2017. Not because you're anxious, not because you're damaged, but because your brain simply refuses to let things go until it has turned them completely inside out, examined every angle, and filed them somewhere that makes sense. If that's you, welcome. Your brain is doing something most people's brains literally cannot. Here's what nobody tells you about people who think too much. It's not a problem to be fixed. It's not anxiety with a different name. It's not overthinking in the pejorative sense the internet loves to throw around. It is, according to an entire body of neuroscience research, a distinct cognitive style with its own architecture, its own advantages, and its own kind of brilliance that the world chronically undervalues. You've probably been told your whole life to stop overthinking, to just let things go, to not make it complicated. And I understand why that advice exists, but it fundamentally misunderstands what's actually happening inside the brain of someone who thinks deeply, and why that wiring might be one of the most powerful things about you. Let's get into it. The first thing you need to understand is that your brain isn't stuck in a loop. It's running simulations. There's a network in your brain called the default mode network, the DMN. It activates when you're not focused on a task. For most people, it hums quietly in the background during downtime. For deep thinkers, it absolutely does not do that. Research published in the journal Neuroimage found that individuals who score high on what psychologists call trait rumination, which is a clinical way of saying people who think a lot, show significantly higher baseline activation in the default mode network. Their brains are running background processes at full capacity essentially all the time. But here's where it gets interesting. The default mode network is the same network responsible for imagination, future planning, autobiographical memory, and this one's important, perspective taking. When you're lying awake at 2 a.m., parsing a conversation from 3 years ago, you're not just spinning your wheels. Your brain is running what neuroscientists call mental simulations, modeling alternate outcomes, extracting meaning, building a more sophisticated internal map of how the world works. You've probably noticed that you often arrive at insights other people miss, that you see patterns early, that you know how something is going to unfold before it does. That's not a coincidence. That's a brain that has been rehearsing scenarios on repeat and building predictive models most people never develop. Your overthinking isn't dysfunction, it's processing power. The second trait deep thinkers share, and this one surprises people, is that you feel things more intensely than you let on. There's a concept in psychology called sensory processing sensitivity, first identified by researcher Dr. Elaine Aron in the 1990s. About 15 to 20% of the population is what she calls highly sensitive. Not emotionally fragile, but neurologically wired to process stimuli more deeply. The brains of highly sensitive people show greater activation in regions associated with empathy, awareness, and processing complexity. They pick up on subtleties others miss. They're more affected by art, music, other people's moods. They think deeply because they feel deeply, and feeling deeply drives the need to understand deeply. Here's the scene. You walk into a room and within 30 seconds, you've clocked the tension between two people who haven't even acknowledged it yet. You've noticed the body language, the slight edge in someone's voice, the way the air feels different. You don't know how you know. You just know. And then everyone else catches up 15 minutes later when the argument actually happens and you're sitting there thinking, yeah, I saw that coming. That's not anxiety. That's not paranoia. That's your nervous system doing what it was built to do. Pick up information at a granular level that gives you an edge. Most people are reading headlines. You're reading footnotes. Third, people who think too much often have a complicated relationship with certainty. And that's actually a sign of higher order thinking. Psychologists use a term called need for cognition, the degree to which someone is intrinsically motivated to think through complex problems. Studies from Ohio State University found that people high in need for cognition not only seek out complexity, they're actually more comfortable sitting in ambiguity. They don't rush to conclusions. They resist the urge to simplify what isn't simple. Here's how that plays out in real life. Someone asks you a question, and instead of firing off an answer immediately, your brain does something infuriating. It starts generating exceptions. Well, it depends. It's complicated. There are a few ways to look at this, and the people around you sometimes take this as indecision, as weakness, as you not knowing your own mind. But what's actually happening is that your brain is holding multiple frames simultaneously, which is cognitively demanding and cognitively rare. Psychologists call it dialectical thinking, the ability to hold contradictions without needing to collapse them. It's one of the hallmarks of what researchers identify as wisdom. Not IQ, not confidence, not certainty. Wisdom. The capacity to understand that the truth is almost always more layered than a single answer can capture. When everyone else is confidently wrong, you're the one who knew it was more complicated. That's not indecision. That's intellectual honesty operating at a level most people never reach. Fourth, deep thinkers are often misread as distant, aloof, or in their heads because they literally are frequently. And that's not rudeness, it's architecture. When something happens to you, your brain doesn't just log it and move on. It routes it through context, through history, through meaning. By the time you finish processing a simple conversation, you've cross-referenced it with 17 related memories, explored 3 possible interpretations, and arrived somewhere most people never go. The downside, you sometimes miss the moment because you're too busy understanding it. You've been in a conversation physically while being somewhere else entirely in your mind, and you've had to pull yourself back and pretend you were fully present. It's not that you don't care, it's that your brain doesn't know how to not go deep. It's structurally incapable of surface level engagement with things that matter to you. Fifth, and this is the one that I think matters most, people who think too much tend to carry a quiet, persistent sense that they haven't done enough, said the right thing, made the right call. And this isn't low self-esteem, it's something else entirely. Psychologists call it counterfactual thinking, the brain's tendency to generate alternate scenarios for what could have been. Research from the University of Illinois found that people who engage more frequently in counterfactual thinking tend to show higher motivation to improve, better performance on complex tasks, and more sophisticated learning from past experiences. Your brain runs the "what if I had done X instead" simulation, not because it hates you, but because it's extracting lessons at a level that other brains simply skip. Most people who describe themselves as overthinkers are actually reflective thinkers who've never been given a framework that tells them that's a completely legitimate and even valuable cognitive style. The quiet sense that you could have done better, that's not self-punishment. That's high standards meeting a brain that actually takes the work of living seriously. I want to be clear about something. I'm not saying thinking deeply makes you superior to people who don't. There are real advantages to being someone who acts quickly, who doesn't second guess, who processes and moves on. The world runs on people who can make fast decisions and not lose sleep over them. Neither style is better. Both are necessary. But what I am saying is that if you've spent your whole life being told your brain is too much, too complicated, too sensitive, too in your head, the neuroscience and psychology simply don't support that verdict. You're not malfunctioning. You're running a different operating system. Here's what all of this adds up to. People who think too much aren't broken. They're not neurotic. They're not incapable of peace. They are, by the research, people whose brains have been wired through genetics, through environment, through a combination of both, to process the world at depth, to simulate, to feel acutely, to resist easy answers, to carry the weight of the unlived alternatives. That wiring has costs. It costs you sleep sometimes. It costs you presence. It costs you the comfortable simplicity that other people seem to move through life with, and that you sometimes desperately wish you could access. But it also gives you something most people spend their entire lives trying to develop and never quite manage: the ability to actually understand things. Not just know them, not just react to them, understand them from the inside, at the root, with all their contradictions intact. The world tells people like you to think less. The world is wrong.